Hello everyone, I'm WizX, and in this comprehensive tutorial I'm going to show you how to truly create a realistic Lego brick material within Maya. This is specifically the equivalent of the materials you can effectively utilize in my Brickit script, which allows you to effortlessly and rapidly create your Lego models directly in Maya. With a complete library of bricks, a polished interface, and above all, a very intuitive snapping system, the experience comes as close as possible to real Lego building. You'll find the link to this script in the description, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite you to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Okay, so we're going to go over all the essential techniques and fundamental principles of shading together by carefully shading a simple, iconic Lego brick. So the first thing to note is the layout, especially on a single screen. You can see here that the most important thing is the hypershade, so I've cleared everything out to keep only the essentials. The board, my viewport, which isn't the most important, so it's a bit smaller, and here Arnold to obviously have the render, and I'm missing the attribute editor to modify all the attributes of my nodes and everything I need. Alright, so I have my brick, and I'm going to start developing its appearance from scratch. So to begin this process, we can start here by calling up an AI standard surface, which will serve as my primary shader. I'll rename it right away for better organization, so I'll call it brick shader, or for example, let's call it yellow shader, to reflect its intended color. The very first and most important thing to do is to assign this newly created shader. I will set a vibrant yellow color for it and then proceed to assign it directly to my object. So I will first select my object, right click. Be careful with the right click. Sometimes it doesn't work. If you're too far away, it won't work. And you can simply select and then press F. You really need to right click precisely on the swatch to make absolutely sure it works correctly and not from too far away. And now I can assign it to my material. So if it doesn't work, just a reminder, it's because you have this mode enabled, which is actually an overlay that turns all your elements gray. So you need to enable them, or sometimes it can be useful, but when it's enabled, everything is gray. So here my part is correctly yellow. Okay, so this is our very first render. So the initial thing I can do, so for my render I made absolutely sure to have reflections and all that, my lighting is properly set up, is that I can easily switch, but please be very careful. People often make this common mistake. Make absolutely sure you're on base and not on specular, because they are two distinctly different things, okay? Base is the color, specular is the reflection. Here I set my color to yellow. Now I'm going to set the intensity to 0, just to turn off the color completely. So I tell it, yellow color at 0%. What does that do? It makes it black. So this is kind of a percentage from 0 to 1. My reflection here is active, so it creates a black color. For my specular, it's the same. Weight is intensity at 100%. If I set it to 0, I no longer have any reflection. This is the intensity of my reflection. Here, just as a reminder, at 0 it's a mirror. And the higher you go, the more matte it becomes. Okay, great. Now I'm going to add some texture in here because right now I'm only working with sliders. So the first thing I'm going to do is, why not, take a little snapshot as well. We're going to try to cover everything quickly so I can save my states and track my progress. So I'm going to need a texture, so I go into my textures, and let's grab the fingerprint one we've seen before. So fingerprint, I drag and drop it into the viewport. As always, when I import a texture, I set its color space. I will click on my texture and make sure it's set to utility raw. Reminder, all textures are set to raw, except for the base color, which is in sRGB. Okay, so I've got it. So to apply it, when you want to plug something in, just move in closer. You have on the left what you want to plug, and on the right, where you want to plug it in, the receiver. I'm going to put it into specular roughness here. So what I'm going to put is here I have the 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I am going to take the R channel and put it into the specular roughness input. So my texture will be set here. I am hitting play. So this is going to take a little while. You'll see at the bottom, check the make TX, which means it's translating and converting the texture, which is a JPEG, into TX, which is the Arnold format. And now nothing is going to happen. Normally this works, but in our specific case here, it's a particularity. The Lego bricks, these objects, don't have UVs. So normally you will have UV, it will work. We don't have UV rays here. So we saw a very useful node that still allows you to apply a texture without on an object that would not typically have UV coordinates, which is called a triplanar. So we can tab and then type AI triplanar. Okay, so as a quick reminder, the triplanar node now, I'm going to want to carefully put it between the two existing nodes. So I'm going to take the out color this time. So I take my whole image and I put it as the input for this one. So I'll pass info from my texture through a triplanar. Here, same out color, I take the R and that's what I'll put here. Okay, so it goes in between. I press play and now something is starting to happen. Okay, so now I have some spots, but they seem a bit too repetitive. But compared to before, if you have any doubts, or if it's sometimes barely visible, that's why I always do before and after comparisons. It lets me see the effect that's happening. Great, so I have several adjustments to make here. What you can do is simply hit the play button. And you have this particular node available here, which conveniently lets you isolate the currently selected node. It could be a light source or a complex shader. So, with that in mind, I am going to proceed and select my triplanar. You see, if I select my texture, it shows me exactly what Arnold sees at that spot. Fingerprint, it doesn't see anything because there are no UVs. But Fingerprint AI triplanar at this level, it sees the texture that's applied. There's no shader, no background, no lighting. It's really just the application of the AI triplanar. This truly allows me to clearly see the intricate texture precisely and then make necessary adjustments right here, especially to the overall scale. So scale, I don't know, every time you test, try times 10 or times -10, that's it. If I decrease it by 10 here, it enlarges my texture. So here, it's a little bit too much. Yes, it is quite a hassle to meticulously do all 3 axes, but hey, you eventually get used to it. You just search calmly. For a fingerprint value that's more or less consistent and stable. So 0.2, I think that particular setting will be quite good. There, it's still a little bit small, so in the end 0.1 was not so bad after all. Well, after that you will definitely have to experiment a bit further. And here you can simply leave it as object to prevent it from sliding around during the animation process. We're going to have a small seam appear, so for that, what I recommend is to blend it here, set it to 0.5. As the name suggests, it will blend the seams and mix the two textures so that it disappears. There we go, now I have my roughness texture set up properly. So I will exit isolation mode, then refresh the view, and now I have the complete result right here, with all my fingerprints at the absolutely correct scale. Now I'd like to see, well, it actually turns out it works pretty well by default, which is great. But just as a quick reminder, I'm going to take a screenshot, a visual snapshot. The next important thing about my component is, if I want to precisely color correct this visual information to carefully adjust my roughness, whether I want it to be significantly more matte or perhaps more highly reflective, while still completely keeping the previously added texture. So for that specific purpose, it's an AI color correct node that is located right here. So what I'm going to do now is simply place it before. I think it could work after, but as a rule, I'll just put the texture in there, modify the texture, and then do its placement. So the out color output into the input, and again, as is always the case, red to red, output to input, just like that. So here, nothing will happen because by default, it doesn't change anything. The default values here don't affect the render. Same thing, we can isolate, select the high color correct, but in this case, it hasn't been placed yet, so it won't work. It simply won't work. It will certainly work, but we won't be able to properly visualize it. It definitely works, but I personally can't visualize it at all. So go ahead. Gamma should be quite sufficient normally, but please do take it easy. Just slightly lowering the value a little bit actually makes it much more reflective. If I were to raise it by just a mere 0.2, it then looks considerably more matte. Do not go for values that are excessively high. Here I have achieved a really truly matte look. Honestly, it was actually pretty well set by default, right from the very beginning. This particular demonstration was primarily just to show you the underlying idea and the concept behind it. And furthermore, there is also the distinct presence of the white color prominently displayed here as well, and the black, which lets you clamp a bit, reduce the effect. Here for my specific spot, I'm actually going to carefully lower the white and black values. Okay, that's great. Here, now I can possibly put my color back in. Be careful with the intensity of the colors. Colors have an intensity too. Okay, if it's too strong, you see, it's not necessarily your light that's too strong. It might just be the color that's a bit too intense, so I'll lower it a little. And the same thing applies to my specular, making it more or less strong. There you go. A value of 0.7 is quite sufficient, so it's not overly white. I'll leave a little bit of this visual effect right here. Okay, as always, calmly, I take a snapshot and I stop. Now we're going to add the effect that will create the round corner, because as you can see here, we have some super sharp edges and I want to round them off to make bevels on the corners. For that, we're going to use a node called high round corner. By default, you don't have the input. I don't know why, it's a bit poorly designed. You need to click on the 3 distinct layers, these 3 different display modes, more or less compact, depending on your preference. Click so that all 3 are filled in, so it shows you all the nodes. That's something we have everywhere. See here, you have too much information, you want to reduce it. You click, there's the compact, light and full mode. Anyway, for us, that gives us our out value, okay? Transparency, if we don't care about it. Out value is basically the data, the information that comes out, and we're going to plug that into the normal. So same thing, when you connect, see what I'm doing. I bring my node closer. I have both, it's clearly visible. I take it and connect it to normal camera. I press play, it works. It might not work. Because you connected a node, if you have a node that's running or something, the translation doesn't happen. Just a quick reminder, render, update, full scene, to make sure it's not just a little bug if you don't see any effect appearing. Here, my visual effect is working perfectly, and all that's truly left to do is to carefully adjust the radius. I'm going to divide it precisely by 2. There you go, just simply find the absolutely right thickness for this particular application. And obviously it's like night and day before, after all the small little specks that appear. So here we're a bit close up. And when you step back and observe the overall design, you truly start to get that distinctive and satisfying Lego brick feeling, of course. Now we've already incorporated some really nice and subtle shading onto the surface of this brick. We definitely have the specks on the rounds, which is great. And above all, we have a good color, a good brightness to the color. It's important to pay close attention to that so it's correct. And you can see the roughness there. It's present but subtle. Now I'm going to show you how to take it a bit further by enabling SSS. It's not mandatory, okay? You can stop here, it already works well. SSS, I check in the render settings to make sure I have SSS enabled. Normally you're set to 2, which will be enough. You can still set it to 3 for better quality, 2 is a bit low. So I'm going to take a snapshot without SSS. So this will slow down the render time. So I'm going to do a render region to work only on a specific area. And then I'm going to fully enable my subsurface. When I set the subsurface to 100% here, it overrides the base color, which no longer works, okay? It will be 100% the color that's set here. So the intensity is still the same. It's the percentage. And the color, again, is the color you'll see on the SSS. It's this color here that will completely override the other one above when set to 100%. But if I actually set the subsurface to 0.5 in white, you get it, that would then make it 50% this specific color here, and the other remaining 50% would use the one from the base color. If, for example, I set it to green here, the piece will be completely green. There's a slight scaling effect. But if I set it to 50%, it takes the yellow underneath, and if it's set to 0, it takes 100% of the base color. So that's what the white does, it's the opacity, but at 100% it's 100% this color here. So why doesn't the color match the swatch? It's precisely because there's an SSS effect. SSS is when light enters the material, there's a certain distance, up to what depth the rays will penetrate into the material. We're not going to control that with the radius. Don't touch the radius, it's the scale. It's arbitrary. Let's say that one corresponds, if you like, to 1 meter. Let's put it that way. So basically we can already divide it by 10. And we start to see an effect. You can feel the diffusion better, which is in white, but it's still very strong. So 0.05, there you go. So it's definitely present, but certainly not too strong at all. We have a sort of slight gradient between the edges, which are thin, and it's going to be darker. The thicker it is, the darker it gets. Actually, I think we still need to go for it. There, well, I want it to be visible, so I'm going to set it to about 2. You almost have to divide it by 100, compared to the overall scale of the object here, of the brick itself. So what I'm just going to do is take and put back in my yellow color that I had previously up there. You can also say the effect is too strong, so I'm going to do what I showed you, only 50% SSS. And now it's subtle. It shouldn't overpower my thing. You can mix, you can do 50-50. Okay, so you can really clearly see the significant difference here. It's still definitely too strong, and it absolutely needs to be carefully adjusted and fine-tuned. We need to diligently look for the precise and optimal right settings. But it still always consistently adds an additional extra effect. There you go. It's truly and remarkably useful throughout the entire process. Okay, I'm just going to carefully set it back to 0 to smoothly continue with the next important part. So now, I'm going to thoroughly explain something to you that I haven't explicitly shown you in our class sessions. So this is for those who really and truly want to finish the entire job and go all the way through with the process, which means making very small, delicate scratches on the hair strand itself. You know, micro scratches actually, which will be barely visible, but you can see them with broken nails, since plastic is soft and will get micro scratched. So a Lego brick that would be more worn out. We're just going to carefully disconnect the high run corner for now. There, just gently set it aside for a moment. And so I'm going to carefully take a texture that will be, I don't know, we can perhaps use this particular one. There you can see the little subtle scratches here, for example, on this surface. So I think there are too many on this one. This one seems a bit more subtle to me. All right, let's see. We'll start with this one. At least it'll be really obvious. So I import my texture, utility raw. Okay. I'm going to Ctrl-D the triplanar because I need a triplanar to apply it. I already know that. And now this triplanar, I'm going to put it into normal camera. So here I can't connect it like that. I need another bump, so I'm going to go into geometry and put it into bump mapping here. What you need to do here is take the triplanar and drop it onto bump mapping. It opens a connection editor window for me. I'm not going to explain it to you. Just do exactly as I am doing. I'm going to carefully take the out color. No, it is definitely not the out color. It is something else entirely. Yeah, we will definitely take the R. It's not a particularly big deal at all. We are just going to carefully and precisely put it into the bump value input. There we go. That looks really good and is exactly what we wanted. Okay, it successfully created this node for me, which is very helpful for our workflow. From the original bump value. Okay, that's another one to do the bump, so the effect I want. Let's try, we'll press play. I'll wait a bit for it to do the make TX. There we go, so it works. Okay, so it's extremely strong. By default, the bump is extremely powerful. I'm going to put it over there on the reflection. It did give me the scratches on my object, but multiplied by 1,000. So we're going to go to the bump depth, which is the intensity, and I'm going to divide it by 10. There, that's starting to look better. And I'm going to divide it by 10 again, so that'll make it 100. So these grooves start to have a more natural thickness. Here it looks like it's inverted, so I'm going to put a small minus sign in front of the bump depth. That didn't actually change anything. Here we can clearly see that it's going inward. Sanba de ama. And the bump depth is still too strong, so I'm going to divide it by 2 again. And now it gives me some really light, very tiny little scratches, you see. It's not the best map. I didn't take the time to look for one for this, but it does the trick. There are just a bit too many of them. So I'm going to save. And we're going to use the other one instead. Let's switch. Perhaps let's try a map that's a little bit lighter. What can we actually try? Scratch, fine. You know, this one isn't really bad. You see, it's a map that I cleaned up just in Photoshop. Otherwise, there's this one, which is a bit finer, but it's a bit too much. I think we can get a better result with this one. So I'll put it in and actually start testing. Here, for the utility raw, I'm just going to completely replace it right here, and then I will carefully put this particular one as the primary input. We will then patiently wait for Arnold to fully convert it. And this specific one, this time it looks so incredibly fine and detailed that I genuinely can't perceive or distinguish anything clearly anymore. Consequently, I am going to perform a comprehensive and thorough full scene update. In fact, I'm even beginning to seriously doubt whether it's actually functioning or working as intended at all. So yes, if I set it to X10, it absolutely works. It's just that it applies to far fewer specific places. It's not actually a particularly big deal. It's just that for the triplanar, I really quite need. Yes, it works as expected. I just need to adjust the scale so that it appears from time to time, occasionally. That's what I truly and deeply want. There are some in a few spots like this, not everywhere. There you go. Okay, so it shows up a little bit in certain places then. Based on the current assessment, it appears that the quantity or amount in question is going to be far too much for the requirements. Alright, so I will definitely keep this particular one, and I will continue to add it consistently, and then I will carefully and gradually lower the overall intensity of it. Okay, well, let's test it. otherwise, what else could we possibly try here? Let's definitely try this particular one. Perhaps it will give us significantly less of a harsh scratch effect. Yes, maybe that is indeed much more interesting and visually appealing, appearing more like distinct dots rather than abrasive scratches. Yes, this seems like a much better option. Plus it's chipped on the corners. Yeah, this one isn't really bad either. Okay, actually, I'm carefully managing the overall intensity, and now what I specifically want to achieve. The current problem is that I have two distinct nodes that absolutely need to go into the normal camera input, which is a crucial step. So I'm going to place it here. There's a dedicated normal input slot, but it's not currently active or connected, so I'll take my bump map, then carefully drop it onto the normal input, and this action will automatically connect it to the normal channel. Subsequently, I'll add the value here, and now it will effectively add the two together, blending their effects. I immediately get the little visual dots that clearly combine with the effect. Since I still have a bit more to refine, what I'll do next, so now I'm truly at the very end of this particular process, is I'll meticulously mix two different maps right here. I don't immediately remember which specific one I originally wanted to use, but for now, let's definitively put an AND node in place so I can conveniently have two separate inputs. Well, I've already forgotten which one was working, but anyway. It effectively mixed the tiny little dots with the distinct stripes. There you go, it successfully creates a unique composite. So perhaps I will carefully do this so we can clearly try to see what's precisely happening. There, if I proceed with this, I will get this specific result. And if I use this particular map instead, it actually adds scratches on top of the dots. I could certainly use a high color correct to truly have the intensity of the scratches be quite different from the dots, but now I'm starting to get an effect that's really not too bad at all. Now we're really getting quite close to achieving the authentic Lego Movie effect. If you carefully look at the various Lego Movie references, you will truly see these distinctive scratches, these prominent stripes, plus the intricate mix of both stripes and numerous little dots, if you really wanted to go all the way with the details. I can effectively add my SSS at approximately 0.4. This crucial SSS will subtly make these tiny micro scratches virtually disappear due to the inherent diffusion principle, which means light scatters beneath the surface, so you will inevitably have to carefully rebalance everything each time. However, here we now have a truly good, complete setup for a classic Lego brick that's genuinely starting to look exceptionally nice. So at this point, we are just missing the essential studs, and then we will have achieved a truly great and polished look.